Welcome back to another reading and correcting of Bottom Rung. With me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. Today we are doing chapter 33. Get a drink, get a snack. It's gonna be a long one. Tibs ran into another shop, exclaiming at something red hanging out from the window. He did not know what it was. He didn't care. Maintaining the excitement was becoming difficult, but there had to be a point where his friends would grow tired of this and he'd be able to get on with Bardic's task. Unfortunately, Jackal seemed to have borrowed Krosef's enthusiasm. Every shop they entered, he looked through everything there. He'd already spent coins on a small stone carving of a bull and one of what he claimed was a jackal. Karina looked doubtful, but it was the first Tibbs heard of it being an animal. So he took his friend at his word. Jackal was in the shop before Tibbs, exclaiming something that was muffled by the closing door. Karina followed Tibbs in. She had little enthusiasm for it left. The little she had been spent in the shop that turned out to sell books. She gazed at them wistfully, gently running a hand over the leather cover. The color varied, but they were all rich, brown, red. The colors varied, but all were rich. Browns, reds, even greens and yellows. Some were plain, some had details etched into the leather. One was engraved with what looked like gold to Tibbs, but Kierna told him was only a pigment that colored it like that. She still looked at that book like it would make her life better. While the shopkeeper didn't speak a language any of them understood, he knew the word for gold in every language and conveyed that the book she looked at was 12 gold. The shopkeeper even offered one that was clearly old, with the cover scuffed and cracked. The blank pages were yellowed at the edge. That book was still 1 gold. Tibbs hadn't understood why it was so expensive. It was light, no larger than Jackal's outstretched hand. Karina explained that it was the process to make each page. Explained that the process to make each page was arduous. Then came the binding, the leather work. Jekyll had asked why they didn't use magic to make them, and she'd laughed. Hiring sorcerers was even more expensive. This figured she'd be at the one to decide she was done, but she stuck with them. Tibbs, look at this, Jekyll said. Jekyll had a blue fabric draped over his arm. It's silk. I should have a shirt made out of this. Why? Because silk can't be cut. That's a myth, Karina said. It's just more difficult to pierce, but that's also very expensive. So my armor's better? Of course it is, Tibbs asked. Of course it's better, Jekyll said. But you can wear this underneath. Have an undershirt made of it. Is it better than my ice armor? The fighter looked at him. Tibbs, you don't have an ice armor yet. Any more armor, and more armor is always better. Buy? The shopkeeper said as she joined them. How much? Jekyll asked and got a confused look. She doesn't understand you, Jekyll, Kierna said. Coins? Money? The shopkeeper asked and only received more confusion. How much is it? Tibbs asked. Cheap, the woman answered. Copper, silver, electrum? Electrum. She lifted both hands and Tibbs counted the fingers. It's 8 electrum pieces. Jekyll hurried to roll the fabric and put it back in among the others. A shirt isn't worth that. Karina chuckled as she followed them outside. You do understand that she sells the entire roll. She sells entire rolls, right? She expected you to make shirts out of anything else. Wait. She expected you to make shirts or anything else out of it and sell that. Then what we need is a tailor, Jekyll said, looking around eagerly. I'm not buying another shirt, Tibbs protested. It's not a shirt, the fighter replied, indicating a shop that with a thread and needle on the sign. It's another layer of armor. I'm going that way. Tibbs pointed down the sloping road. He'd said he wanted to see the sea, so that still supported what he'd said. He started in that direction without listening to Jekyll's protest. Tibbs, the fighter called, catching up to him. Be reasonable. I just want to make sure you survive. You're kind of the center of this team. Tibbs turned to face the fighter, frowning. What does that mean? Karina's the brain, I'm the brawn, and you're the heart. You're sounding like we're some bard story, Kirino said. That's how they start. A bunch of strangers thrown together by adversity. Tibbs. Jekyll reached for him as someone. Okay, wrong tone here. That's how they start. A bunch of strangers thrown together by adversity. Tibbs. Jekyll reached for him as someone ran into Tibbs. Sorry, the man called behind him as he kept running. Tibbs hurried to get back to his feet, checking himself to make sure nothing was missing. He glared toward the runner, glimpsing green as it vanished into an alley with something strapped to the back. Tibbs let out a strangled cry as Jekyll grabbed his collar and pulled him out of the way of the larger man that ran through where Tibbs had stood. Then two more followed after them, yelling obscenities. Well, someone's having fun, Jekyll commented as they vanished down the same alley as the first man. He let go of Tibbs, who could breathe again. Did you two notice the bracelet? The bracelets? Karina asked. I was too busy being run over than strangled, Trim grumbled. You're welcome, Jekyll replied. I was making sure Tibbs didn't get trampled. She tapped her bracelet. All four of them were like ours. I even saw the yellow gem on them. Are they a team? Tibbs asked, rubbing his neck. If they are, the team dynamics need work, Jekyll said. I don't know that dynamics word, Tibbs said absently. It means how they work together, Kirina answered. 3 against 1 isn't fair, Tibbs said. Should we help? We're not anyone's keeper, Jekyll replied. That first man did have a bow on his back, Kirina said. We could use an archer. If he's being chased, I'm not sure he's the kind of archer we want, Jekyll replied, his tone firm. He did say he was sorry, Tibbs pointed out, trying to think of one time when he'd bother apologizing to someone he shouldered aside while running for his life. He walked toward the alley. Tibbs, Jekyll called. It isn't our... The fighter cursed as Tibbs began running. If a runner was in trouble, Tibbs was going to help. Their lives were hard enough already. If it turned out he deserved to be chased, Tibbs would figure out what to do then. Jekyll caught up to him. You know, for being as straight as you care a lot more than I do. I'm the heart, aren't I? And if it makes you feel better, I'll tell you it's a water thing. It doesn't, the fighter said with a chuckle, then outpaced Tibbs. Karina caught up to Tibbs just as he was about to run faster. She was panting, so he stuck by her. Jekyll could hold his own until they reached him, if he had to. And it would serve him right for showing off like that. Tibbs was the runner. He was supposed to be faster. He cursed the fighter in his long legs. They followed the sound of running for a few minutes, then a voice. Come on, guys. You don't want to do this. Oh, that's where you're wrong, Mez. Another one answered, deeper, carrying meanness in the tone. We've been waiting a long time to teach you your place. Yeah, another one voice said. Don never asked us if we wanted you in the team, and right now, he's not here to protect you. Well, then again, we aren't here either, are we? A third voice said, smooth like that silk fabric Jekyll had shown him. We're all enjoying the girls. Don was nice enough to pay for us at that house. Ain't that right? So you should think really hard about how badly you want this, the mean one said. What's the problem here? Jekyll demanded. Nothing that concerns you, the mean one said as Tibbs rounded the corner. This is private business. He stopped next to Jekyll. The man who'd spoken matched the voice, bulky muscles under an expensive shirt, small mean eyes, a vicious smile along a patchy beard. I'm not talking to you, Jekyll said. Mez, was it? Do you mind explaining what's going on? I appreciate the thought, fellow, Mez replied. He was a he was a man with a he was a man. I will read. Yeah. Yeah. Had a dark tan, wearing green shirt and brown pants. They were nice, if a little worn. He held the bow in one hand, but no arrows. Tibbs couldn't see a quiver. The man's eyes were bright. Yeah, that's changed. It's no longer fire is no longer just bright red. Um, his eyes were deep orange. His essence was fire. Trust me, what you want to do right now is walk back the way you came. I would, Jekyll replied, but my friend here figures us runner needs to stick together. He raised his left hand, causing the sleeve to slide down and show his bracelet. And I've learned to trust him on things like that. I'm the dumb one of the team. Clearly, the mean one said, which caused the other two with him to snicker. One was wiry, with a knife sheath at his belt, and Tibs decided he was a rogue. The other was also muscular, so another fighter. And Don would be the team's sorcerer. Tibbs was happy they'd said he wasn't here. He didn't want to have another run-in with that man. Don't, Kirina said, panting. Sal, panting some more. Jekyll short, more panting. Just because he isn't the smart one, she glared at the fighter. I'm killing you for making me run like this once this is over. She straightened. He makes up for it with determination. I'll keep that in mind, Jekyll told her, then looked at the mean one who seemed to be in charge in Don's absence. And as much as I appreciate the warning, we're not going anywhere until this is resolved. I know cities. If they round up one of you with this bracelet, they're going to start looking for everyone wearing it. And if we're lucky, they'll just kick us out of the city. If we're not, it's going to be a sell for us. Do you think they're going to let us out when this thing turns red? Just because we tell them Do you think they're going to let us out when this thing turns red just because we tell them we have a dungeon to return to? You heard hard knuckles. If we don't go back when it turns if we aren't back. If we aren't back when it turns black, we're dead. Not risking it because you three are being idiots. I want more loot. Aren't I the rogue? Tips couldn't help asking. Why are you the one always bringing up loot? I'm in the middle of a speech. I'm in the middle of this because of you, Tibbs, Jekyll said, grinning. Don't interrupt my speech. Tibbs noticed the rogue's eyes narrowing at the mention of his name. And now that I've met you, Mez, I think that you would be a good addition to our team. We need an archer, and fire would round us up nicely. So how about you let the three of us help you deal with them? Mez glanced at them. Fine. So long as it's clear your help doesn't mean I'm joining your team. I'm not falling for it a second time. Understood, Jekyll replied. Let's call this an introduction and our letter of reference then. Mez stared at the fighter, then chuckled. Sure, why not? The mean one looked from Mez to Jekyll. Are we done? Or do you two want a room? I am taken, Jekyll protested. I don't cheat on my man. Like I care, the mean one replied. You two deal with the idiot and the kid. I'm going to teach Mez what happens to holier-than-thou people. He punched his palm, and the sound of it was like the. He punched his palm, and the sound it created was not flesh on flesh. Tibbs stepped away from Jekyll, taking out his knife. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Karina glaring at the mean one. At her feet, the dust was starting to dance. Jekyll's skin thickened and gained the brown of earth. Do not treat me like I'm not here, Karina snapped, and the wind whipped past Tibbs to strike the man facing Mez. He took a step forward from the impact, and the wind cut his clothing apart, leaving shallow cut on his skin. Everyone paused to look at her. That's new, Jekyll said. She shook her head, hand on her knees, panting. That's what my attacks look like when I'm fighting something not made of stone. She looked up. Oh, come on! You should be writhing in pain. The man smiled at her, showing broken teeth. Missy, I am going to enjoy teaching you your place once I'm done with the archer. Tibbs ran for the rogue, taking his amulet in his free hand. He drew on it, iced the ground before him, dropping to his knees and sliding. The other rogue didn't stop in time, and his foot slipped out from under him. Tibbs sliced through the knife, only to cut the shirt. He needed to practice this before the next time. He melted the ice and put his foot down and drew the water back in, then stood. The rogue got to his feet. Don's going to be really happy when I tell him about how I killed you. He took a short sword from the knife-sized scabbard at his hip. Tibs frowned and focused. Yeah. Um, and focus. Of course. One through with essence. The rogue's eyes were gray, so metal. Flat gray. So metal. He stepped toward Tibs, swinging his sword left and right. Tibs only knew the basics of what metal did. It let them keep their swords sharp, let them mold metal around them, if they had any on their person. This one looked to only have the sword. He either hadn't prepared ahead or didn't consider that aspect important. He swung and Tibs dodged. Swung again, and Tibs stepped back out of reach, forcing the man to move with him. He caught sight of Jackal punching one fighter and the mean one grabbing Mez by the throat, and immediately put them out of his mind. Once he dealt with his opponent, he'd see about helping them. He quickly stepped to the side and around the rogue, who wasn't as quick, but still fast enough to block the knife slash. Tibbs rolled back to his feet before the counter swing. The counter swing came. Stop moving, the man growled. Who's been teaching you to fight? Tibbs asked. We're rogues. We don't stand still. He dodged another swing, then another one. He coated his forearm with ice and willed it as hard as he could, blocking the next stripe as he stepped forward, slashed at the rogue's stomach, and kept going past him. The block cost him essence from the ice stripping off, and he moved some from his amulet to his reserve. The man cursed and glared at Tibbs. No wonder Don hates you so much. What did I do? Tibbs asked, surprised at the vehemence in the words, then cursed himself as the sword sliced through the ice in his arm and to leave a red line on his skin. Oh, right. You like playing innocent, the man replied, smirking. Tibbs forced the comment out of his mind. Barty kept telling him in a fight wasn't the time for his curiosity to get the better of him. Win, then ask question. Tibbs quickly sheathed his knife, stepping back. The man grinned. Finally realizing you can't win this. You can't win, can you? That's okay. Run away, like the coward you were. Tibbs really hoped this was going to work. He steadied himself, pulled the water out of his amulet and to his wrist. Distance probably didn't matter, but why take the chance? This was just manipulating part of his reserve, he reminded himself as he drew the essence out and moved it through his arm to his hand. He grabbed the knife, pushing the essence in it, moving the water over it at the same motion, mixing the two. He flicked the knife and released the essence. The man was still smirking as the jet of water hit him and sent him flying back. Tibbs' jaw dropped. He had no idea that could happen. Then he grinned as the rogue stayed on the ground. He couldn't wait to show this to Alistair. Carinel looked at him, eyes wide, and he smiled at her. He was out of essence, too, but he wasn't exhausted. Jekyll was now facing the mean one, the other fighter unconscious on the ground. Mez was sitting up, rubbing his throat. Jekyll squared his shoulder. So, you want to do this essence up, or are you a man? Or are you a real man? The man snorted. Now that they were close, Tibbs saw he was a taller. Now that they were close, Tibbs saw he was taller and more muscular than Jackal. Unlike Jackal's earth-brown skin, his was rocky gray. You think I need essence to beat you to a pulp? Skin regained a normal tone. I've been breaking boys like you for years. Jackal's skin also regained its normal tan. He smiled. Then come and teach me. The man rushed Jackal, who quickly stepped left, then and right, dodging and blocking. Jackal smiled. I'm going to call this the Marin Special. He quickly swung at the man's head, his entire arm thickening and turning deep brown. When it hit, the man fell sideways, crumbling to the ground as he tried to put a foot under him. A foot. When it hit, the man fell sideways, crumbling to the ground as he tried to put as the you know what? So, crumbling on the ground. I don't need the rest. I really don't. He attempted to push himself up, but his brown red eyes rolled back and he slumped, unconscious. What was that? Nez demanded. That was me winning, Jekyll answered, picking up the bow and turning it over. It looked fine to Tibs as he joined the fighter, other than the string being gone. You told him no essence, the archer said, outraged, snatching the bow out of his hand. Street rules, Jekyll replied. Never fight fair. And I told him that. Marion never said a true thing in her life. How is it my fault he didn't know that? Jekyll smiled. So, how about that for our introduction? Mess pushed Jekyll out of his way. Fuck you. What? Hey, we just saved your life here, Jekyll replied. I think, the archer rounded on him, I wanted out of that team because they're nothing more than a bunch of common thug. You're just more of the same. Hey, I resent that, Jekyll said. There's nothing common about anyone on this team. You cheat, you lie, Mez snarled. How is that any different? We don't start fights, Tibbs said. He mentally marked Mez as city folk and didn't point out surviving usually required cheating. I'm not sure if you caught the name. I'm not sure if you caught his name before this started, Jekyll said. He's Tibbs, our rogue. Don't let his size fool you. He's smarter than I am. What the size? Mez began asking. That's Karina. Jekyll cut him off. Our sorceress. She's smarter than the two of us put together. Me, I'm Jekyll. What I do is win. I will cheat, I will lie to win a fight. But what I will not do is take advantage of a fellow runner. And them? Archer motioned to the unconscious man. What do you call that? Jekyll looked around, and Tibbs saw the effort it took him not to show pride. Tibbs said it. We don't start fights. They brought that on themselves. I was willing to talk it out. They weren't. They were going to beat you, maybe even kill you. I don't know them that well, he added with a shrug. Mess still didn't look happy. It looked like they were going to let it. It didn't look like they were. It didn't look like they were going to let you go, Kirino said. Mez waved that aside. I would have managed it. Jekyll began, but stopped at Kirino's raised hand. Mez, I'm going to tell you what the dumb fighter told me when they offered me to join their team. I don't know your story, and I'm not going to ask. But while our method might be unorthodox, I think you'll agree the dungeon forced that on us. We survive by adapting, and that means more often than not playing fair. I've seen enough of these two to tell you they're so rough around the edges you could cut yourself on them, but they're good people who cheat and lie. Maybe you can try to teach them better, Kirino said. I wouldn't hold my breath, but you can certainly try. Did she just insult us? Jekyll whispered to Tibbs. Tibbs shrugged. What do you care? She's going to kill you, remember? Karina. Right, Karina. That killing thing. How serious were you about that? I don't know, she said, rolling her eyes at the fighter. Do you have any plan on forcing me to run like that again? I didn't even have a plan to make you run that time, Jekyll replied. You know me, I don't plan anything. Mez looked from one to the other, confused expression on his face. When he looked at Tibbs, he shrugged. You get used to them. How? Mez asked and seemed surprised at his own question. With love and understanding, Jekyll said. A lot of patience. It is not good that I'm laughing at my own writing. Ah. With love and understanding, Jekyll replied. A lot of patience, Karina added. I'm straight, Tib said. They aren't the worst I've had to deal with in my life. There you go, Jekyll exclaimed, messing Tib's curly black hair. If that isn't the epitome of approval, I don't know what is. I have no idea what that word means, Tib said. It means the very best, Karina replied, eyeing Jekyll suspiciously. Jekyll, you two are insane. You did see what I did to that man who ignored my existence, Karina warned. Didn't you? The archer looked uncomfortable and mumbled something. Yes? Karina demanded. With a sigh, he looked at her. I was raised to never say something bad about a lady. Jekyll snorted. What? You're a runner, not a lady? This is how it. This is how you get in trouble with Krosef, Tib said. What did I do this time? Karina chuckled. Maz, how about we go find an inn and. Not Crow's family inn, Jekyll said. They are going to pester me with questions. I thought you liked telling stories. Tibbs asked. Well, those about me and Crow are private. Let's go find a quiet tavern, Karina said, shaking her head in amusement, and you can ask any question you want. I don't promise we'll answer everything, but if you decide we aren't a good fit by the end, we'll go our separate ways. Yes, considered it, then nodded. That's fairer than what Don did. They headed out the alley. Once back on the street, Jekyll pointed to a sign with a tankard over the door. The motion caused the sleeve to pull back, and Tibbs stared at the red gem in the bracelet. He cursed, looking at his own bracelet. Karina sighed. I guess the vacation's coming to an end. Let's go have that drink and Tibbs! He was running down the road. I'm going to see the sea, he called back. I'll hurry and go right back to the platform. Karina yelled something, but he didn't make it out over his breathing and the cursing of the people he had to push out of his way. It wasn't how he'd wanted to do it, certainly not under this kind of time crunch, but he was out of option. He asked about the cliffside general gatherer anytime he found someone he understood, and eventually made it to a large building made of polished stone. Eventually reached. A large building made out of polished stone. Further down the road, he could make out some of the green-blue fields glittering in the lowering sun, like gems scattering on the ground cut, out of a cut point per out of a cut coin pouch. He judged the height of the sun. Once he was done here, he'd run to the sea. Then he'd leave. It wouldn't take more than a few hours, and that should be fast enough. He hoped so. He entered, and smells of wood, spices, and leather enveloped him. The large room was filled with counters within which were items he didn't recognize. On shelves were pieces of armor, leather, metal, and some made out of things he didn't know. Boxes with writing on them. Oh, this is a little clunky. On shelves were pieces of armor, leather, and metal. Eh, oh, were pieces of armor. Okay. Leather and armor. And some other metal thing. So and leather, metal, and other things he didn't know. Things he didn't know, as well as boxes with writing on them. He approached the shelves, wondering what was within the boxes. A woman said something, startling him as he reached for one. He stared at her, immediately considering how he'd escape. She was tall and lean, dressed in a gray light shirt and brown pants. Her hair was blonde and short. He'd run around the counter. He'd run around the counter, forcing her to slow, if he could make so he could make it to the door before she reached. "Can I help you?" she said, then said something else he didn't understand. Right, he wasn't here to steal anything. Wait, I only understood that what you said before. She smiled. Persitian. That's not a language I hear often in this city. How may I help you? Tibbs studied her. There was something different, but he couldn't place it. Her eyes were green, but the normal pale version of it. Her face was lean just like her? Oh, okay, okay, like the rest of her. Just like the rest of her. He stopped himself. Once he was done, he could try to figure it out. I'm looking for the owner. He tried to remember the name Bardic had given him. Charles. Sir Cliff is at home. I'm in charge of the store today. I know everything here as well as he does. That wasn't a name. but she spoke of him as if he was the owner. Maybe Bardic hadn't wanted old Walrus to know the name? The name, which was why he'd pointed out he was the owner? I need to speak to him, to Sir Cliff. To Sir Cliff. She gave him a knowing smile. He does not do business from his home, but I am authorized to evaluate what it is you wish to sell. Tibs took a breath to calm himself. He couldn't remember how long he had, but it had to be at least until the end of the day. He fought the urge to look at the gem. It's personal. I need to talk with Sir Cliff. Can you direct me to his home? She studied him, finally mumbling something to herself he couldn't make out. The tone made him happy she didn't. She let out a breath. Sir Cliff's home is on the Torban house. It's on the Lavilane Road, which is 6 roads further towards the sea. It's a turquoise house. You will know it. Thank you. He repeated the words Lavilane quietly as he ran. It sounded foreign, counted 6th Street and stopped. Was it left or right? Lavilane? He asked someone walking by and received a shake of the head. He asked 3 more times before deciding to go left. He couldn't spend the rest of his time looking for someone who'd understand what he was asking about. Not with the sun continuing to go down and his time running out. At least he knew turquoise. He'd seen the stone before. He hadn't been able to get it, but it had captivated him until the owner noticed him looking and he chased him off. He looked for a house of that color and made it to the cliff without seeing one. He cursed. He'd picked the wrong direction. The shadows were long when he made it back to the main road. He didn't take the time to admire the glittering of the sea. He ran across and down the street, hoping that towards the sea hadn't been some local saying for something other than towards the sea. If the house wasn't here, he didn't know what he'd find. He didn't know how he'd find it, and he didn't think the shop would be open after sunset. Maybe he should go back right now and ask for clearer direction? As he considered doing that, he saw the house. Uh, the blue darker in the little light than in the blue darker in the little light that was left. He considered looking it over, searching for the best entry point. You know what? Uh, he, he, that's, he looked it over, searching for the best entry point. Climbed to the roof and looked at the sea. Since he was confident he wouldn't get to go closer to it now. He wasn't breaking into the house, he reminded himself, and banged on the door, catching his breath. The door opened and a woman looked down at him. She was tall, like the woman at the shop, but instead of lean, she was large, the kind of large the cooks in town tended to be. And she smiled at him. She said something that also sounded kind, but he didn't understand it. Tibs didn't voice his cursing. She didn't deserve even the tone. What if the man Bardic wanted him to see didn't understand him? I need to speak with Sir Cliff, he said, speaking slowly. Cliff, she replied, smiling. She motioned for him to enter, and he hesitated. He reminded himself he wasn't on his street, or even a street. He was dressed well. She wasn't trying to trick him. She was simply being nice. He stepped into the house, looking left and right for traps, keeping his hand away from the pommel on his knife, but ready to reach for it. Cliff, she called, then added more he didn't understand. A man answered, and she smiled at him, raising a finger before leaving him alone. The entry was comfortable, with a chair and table. On the walls were 3 small paintings. One was of the woman with a man, both young. The man matched the description Bardic gave him if you removed a few decades. The other picture was that of a man who wasn't the one he was here to see, but still seemed familiar. There was some resemblance between the two, but there was also a sense Tibs had met him before. The man had a boy a little taller than Tibs at his side. The third was that same man with a woman on his arm, both smiling with an expression that reminded Tibs of Jackal and Krosef. The man said something, and Tibs turned. They studied each other. He wore a work shirt that was stained and open at the front, showing an undershirt and under that muscle with a layer of fat over them. His eyes were green, similar to the woman in the shop. Tibbs realized, but that was all they had in common. I'm sorry, Tibbs said. I'm not from here. I really hope you can understand me. A person here? Well, it's been a long time since I've encountered someone from that kingdom. The man's voice was deep, rich. What can I do for you, young man? Are you Charles of Godefroy? He asked. Tib would hate to have done all this running and not be at the right house. The man glanced at the painting. I haven't heard that name in a great many years. He was looking at the picture of the man and child. Tibbs saw the resemblance again, although Tibbs now noticed the paint uh, where the eyes had been had chipped off with time. I've been clipped for most of my life, the man said, looking away from the painting. I'm here for a sea drop, Tibbs said. The man shook his head. I don't sell candies here. Go to the store when it opens in the morning. I'll be there. We can discuss it. We can discuss it then. No, Bardick told me to find you. He said that you'd give me one for free to try it, he added, making himself sound plaintive instead of as if he was relaying a message. The man's face clouded over. So he's finally going through with it. I was really hoping he'd see reason. Follow me. Clef? The woman asked as they crossed the kitchen. She was sitting at a table, paper before her, an inkpot and pen next to it. They spoke for a few minutes, and in the end, she smiled approvingly. I told her you were here for candy and that I'm too soft-hearted to turn you away without giving it to you. He smiled at the woman. Cliff led him upstairs, then into a room that looked like an alchemical laboratory from stories Bart told. Tubes, vials, some clear, some opaque, some with colored liquids, and others Tibbs couldn't tell. Tibbs looked at the man's eyes again to confirm they were the normal green, and then sensed the essence in the room, expecting some sign of manipulation, but it was all free-floating. He realized he didn't know if alchemy required essence or if it was something else. The stories never said, and Tibbs hadn't been able to go ask the bards for detail. Not that essence would have been one of his questions. This is a sea drop, the man said, and Tibbs turned to find him holding a misshapen lump of the size of his thumb. It was blue, green, and white, layers that had been folded over each other and now looked like they bled together. You let it dissolve on your mouth. Don't bite it. You're going to break a tooth. The man offered to Tibbs. It's for you. Tibbs looked at it carefully. He hadn't expected to get something out of it, not even the candy. He had been certain it had been a code phrase, so the man would know Bardick had sent him. Then he noticed the wooden box in the other man's hand. He hesitated before offering it to Tibbs. He looked at it, but the man didn't let go. He took it, but the man didn't let go of it. Tell him. He stopped, closed his eyes, said something in the language he'd spoken with the woman, then sighed. What's the point? I couldn't change his mind when I was younger. He won't listen to this old man either. Tell him to be careful. He let go of the box. It wasn't little. It was a little longer than his hand, the width and height of 3 fingers. It wasn't heavy. Tibbs didn't shake it. With the door open, the man didn't shake it. With the door open, the man looked at the sky, which only had sliver of pale red and blues over the building. It's going to be full dark soon. Do you need me to accompany you to the platform? I'm not afraid of what's in the dark, Tibbs said. The man looked at him. No, I suspect you aren't, he sighed. And Tibbs thought he'd say something, but he shook his head. Just hurry. It's best not to tempt those who live in the darkness, even if you aren't afraid of them. Tibbs did run all the way. Tibbs did run all the way to the transport platform. And this concludes chapter 33 of Bottom Rung. If you are enjoying this, please subscribe and hit the bell. Share. Tell your friends. Tell strangers. Tell everyone. If you want to read the story, it is on Royal Road. The link is in the notes, along with one to my Patreon, should you want to support me. And with that, I shall wish you a good day.